Hey everyone, I'm Larry Walsh, and this is Changing Channels. So, the new popular word that everybody's now gravitating towards is outcomes. Vendors are looking to shift their value propositions to the end customers based around the outcomes of the use of that technology. It's not a new concept, but it's growing in importance because the vendors are seeing the same thing that the customers are asking for. They're looking for a better business result. They're looking for a better justification, a better economic model that justifies the money that they're spending on technology, both in terms of durable goods as well as cloud-based services, SaaS services, and especially in AI. And so the vendors are now looking to the partners and say, hey, partners, why don't you get on board and help us out here? Drive better outcomes to the customer. And by driving those outcomes, there is a presumption that there will be a greater return because the customers will then consume more product, consume more services, and renew more often. So that creates lift for the vendors and lift for the partners. But this isn't easy to get to. I mean, even just coming to a common definition about what outcome-based selling or outcome-based value propositions actually means, that's a really difficult thing, and we haven't really done that yet. But there are a class of partners out there that are already doing this and that have been doing this for quite a while. These are the partners that are specialized in business software and specifically in accounting services. Now, these partners they know their customers not just on the products that they use or the technologies that they need, but how they use them. They are aligned around accounting practices, around the rules, and they are rigorous rules for how accounting is and should be done. This is vitally important because you can't screw up the financials. You have to have accurate reporting. And this is the position that Gretchen O'Hara found when she arrived at Sage 6 months ago. She found a partner community that is steep in what their customers do. They understand intuitively and through an immense amount of investment and training on not just what their customers need in software, but how to apply it efficiently. And through the evolution that we're going through and the build out of artificial intelligence, the Sage community is also investing in their next generation of what they're going to do for the customers going forward. So we invited Gretchen O'Hara here to talk about what's happening at Sage, what's happening with its partners, and what can the rest of the channel learn about empowering partners to drive outcome-based value. This is Changing Channels. I'm Larry Walsh. Let's get into it. Gretchen O'Hara, welcome to Changing Channels.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So, Gretchen, you and I have known each other for a bit. You and I first met when you were at Microsoft. I'm not going to say when that was,
Thank you.
but but have had the pleasure of working with you and getting and knowing you through Microsoft, Splunk, Cisco, and now Sage. So you're
Yes.
recently arrived at Sage. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your journey to there?
Yeah. One of the things that, so I've been at Sage for about 6 months now, leading channel ecosystems and professional services. It has been an incredible journey and a journey from our days at Microsoft. But essentially, one of the things for me has really always been about channel transformation, even as early of the days at Microsoft and the multiple transformations that Microsoft has made. Splunk was going through a very similar experience in this hyper growth in cybersecurity. Cisco certainly was looking at channel transformation and building a SaaS-based channel for the future. And here I am at Sage, and Sage has that same opportunity. It's a channel-first company by far. It's a rich ecosystem, but the future is here, and that's around AI. So it's how do you get the thousands of partners and the multi-dimensional ecosystem to be looking at sort of where and how do I build for the future? How do I provide that level of service to my customers? And then ultimately, how do I monetize that and stay with you? So it's a huge opportunity and one that I absolutely love, where we can actually take something that has the best product truth, a lot of incredible loyal channel, but now we got to lead to sort of the next evolution. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited to be here.
So Sage is look for Sage is a software company, but it is a very specific type of software. Your partners are the ones that are actually deeply connected to the accounting profession, and
Yes.
they are technologists, but very much practitioners at the same time. I mean, they know the
Yes.
subject matter as much as they know the technology.
Yes.
How is that's a bit different from where you've come from, and also the way that the Sage channel, the partner ecosystem works. How does that influence the thinking around how you shape that vision going forward?
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, I think every channel leader would aspire to get to that level of capability in an ecosystem. You start with core infra, you think about security, you think about some of the core things that really help a company get up and running. But to your point, what is the level of business expertise that is required? And are you really solving for a customer's business challenges? What are the outcomes that they're trying to ultimately drive, and does the channel an enabler of that, or are they an advisor? And to your point, I love it, a practitioner actually of that. And that's really the difference of Sage. So in some ways, very fortunate to actually already start with something that many other companies are trying to actually build, which is domain business expertise, understanding the technology, but really understanding the craft of what our customers are trying to ultimately accomplish. So I think first of all, that one is really interesting to think about, because how you enable them, how you look at what's important for them in terms of your give and gets, how you co-sell together changes a little bit from what you might have as a ordinary sort of technology partner and understands just the core technology stack. But now one of the things that has to happen is, while there's deep practitioner understanding, AI is moving at hyper speed. In some places, it's almost challenging to catch up on how I should be servicing my customer with AI. I have all this incredible domain expertise. I have deep industry knowledge. In the case of Sage, even micro vertical understanding of the business that really is that last mile to the customer. But how I think about AI, like how
Mhm.
do I ultimately leverage this to make sure that my customers, one, can benefit from it, they can trust it. And Sage is, Larry, as you know, Sage is in a position where we're at the heart of business applications. You cannot mess up your financials. And so AI has a lot of trepidation still. Like, everyone wants to get things done faster. Everyone wants to have that value of the productivity on AI, but you can't mess up your books. You cannot be wrong when it comes down to the closing out of your quarter. And so this is where we're trying to help now shift this incredible domain expertise of partners to bring in where and how AI is going to ultimately help them speed time to value, change and shift what they can do to be even more of an advisor in that opportunity, as customers are all looking at, how do I transform my business, yet once again leveraging AI that I ultimately can trust. And I think
Yeah.
that's the key here, especially in this space, which is, I like it for some things, but do I really want to put AI in the very heart of my business, and am I going to trust it? And that's where Sage has quite a differentiation in the market. And that's what we're helping our partners now understand. How do you build it? Why can you trust it? What is Sage's secret sauce to ensure that you can guarantee that when these agents go in, either that you're building as a partner or ultimately within Sage's product set, that customers are going to get the right outcomes?
It's interesting as you're describing that, because and like this is the way the Sage partner network has always been. These were not technologists that happened to stumble into a better understanding about accounting processes or gap rules or things like that. No,
Right.
they needed that from the beginning. And yet we have an entire industry now that is, I describe it as careening, not necessarily driving, So they're sort of like sliding into this entire idea of outcome-based value propositions,
Right.
right? And it's what the customer wants. The customer doesn't want to buy technology. They want to buy a system that leads to a better outcome that helps their businesses grow.
Yes.
Does that then, in your estimation, does that then mean that Sage is, because of what you are endemically, you are actually out on the leading edge of a trend that others are just discovering?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe so. And it's one of these things where, you know, being in the channel, and we won't say, I always say 25 plus years, and that way I don't date myself too badly on this one. But just think about the evolution, right, of ecosystems over time, you know, from just licensing to transactional to speeds and feeds to then infrastructure, but always the best possible thing a partner can do is have that deep industry domain knowledge. And so while other companies are trying to actually teach all of that because they understand maybe the core infrastructure, they understand sort of the cloud requirements or the security posture that has to happen in a company, they oftentimes have to partner with an expert that actually can then translate that into what you were just saying, Larry, which is what does the customer ultimately need? What's actually solving that business outcome? Think of Sage now as the absolute reverse. Everyone in the ecosystem, first of all, it's a very diverse ecosystem, which is so exciting to see. You have ISVs, you have resellers, you have accountants, you have system integrators, you have advisors, you have everything in all between. But the one thing in common that I think is interesting is it starts actually with the customer, and it starts with knowing deeply the customer, not only what they need on their core business function, but even how it relates to them in their industry, even how it relates to them in their vertical, even how it relates to them in their micro vertical, where oftentimes Sage can't even speak that language. So they're actually out in the very front of us. They are the extension of Sage, having the best domain knowledge within the very specific area of that particular business. And then moving backwards the other side. And I think, yes, I think that puts us in an absolute leading edge because now you've introduced AI. AI, think about now in the future where you don't need these monolithic systems. You're actually having natural language of just asking very simple questions. Now you want to have workflows that really understand what you're trying to get done at the business level. And this is where Sage's partners truly understand that. So now if you can help partners, how do they build those agents? How do they make sure that they can build something that is actually going to work and is going to be trusted and not just experimental? Now you have the best of both worlds. I have an ecosystem that knows the customer better than anybody, the technology platform of Sage Platform that is going to guarantee that you actually have no longer a black box on AI, but a glass box of full transparency so that a partner at any time can understand why and how I'm getting to a particular outcome. And then helping them look at other things like how do you monetize now that great IP? How do you monetize that expertise as an advisor moving forward? It's a really fun challenge to have, but it does put Sage out in the leading front because we don't actually have to try and get them to be outcome sellers. They're already starting there. And now it's about how do they bring the best next level of capability into the customer.
All right, so let's pivot. Because you introduced that idea is that it starts with the customer. I believe that as well. I've always thought like we spend in the channel we spend so much time talking about ourselves and the partners and then somewhere along the way there's a customer, but the customer is the
Right.
one with all the need and the customer is the one with all the money, right? So they right. So how is it though that if you have an ecosystem of partners that actually understands the customers at their core, what is the thing that is challenging them today in terms of evolving to meet future needs? Do they have a leg up because they're already ingrained in the customer mindset but they are now being challenged to on the same issues that the customer is, that they have to evolve into AI thinking. They have to rethink the way that they do data integrity and data security. They need to think about, changing, I hate to bring politics into things, but the world's changing and the economics around the world are changing rapidly.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so what is the, as I like to call it, what's the big rock in the way?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, right? Because when you think about finance and ERP, and to your point, we'll stay out of politics, but just the complexity, right,
Mm,
of international business and what these business leaders have to be thinking about. It is complicated. Again, this is where partners have a really great leg up because they do understand they do understand tax, they do understand compliance, they do understand gap, they do understand sort of the accounting rules and the changes of sort of how they think about those workflows. Now, the big rock, I believe, is how do they then build what customers are now expecting? So I think, let me back up for a second. You made a really good
yeah.
point. I think customers have always been solve my business problem. And I think channel leaders or channels in general have been like, partner, what are you going to do for me as the vendor? Like, what are you going to do to help me sell more? And
Right.
there's always been this sort of disconnect, which is, I'm selling you product. Okay, maybe I'm giving you services, but ultimately, are you really solving with the customer? It starts with the customer. The opportunity or the big rock now is the buying journey is changing. The customer expectations are changing. The pace of which they want to see things are changing. So, what might have been acceptable as a 6-month implementation, for example, of a new accounting system, why can't I do that in 3 weeks? Why does it take, 9 months? Why am I paying really steep integration and services around what should be much simpler? So that's the big change shift that I think, we have to be able to help our partners understand, which is this time to value. There's an expectation that it's faster. The customer buying journey is knowing so much more just through the AI that they use, so much more of what they
Hmm.
expect and what they want. And we have to meet the customers where they are. And that means that our partners have to be the best now at understanding AI and what that AI stack looks like, in addition to continuing to bring the best of what the customer ultimately wants to see in terms of that business value. And then that helps our partners make money because they're actually being able to monetize that advisory capability that, before was really bound into margins and product. That's going to shift. That is absolutely going to shift into, hey, you're going to be monetizing the value that I'm bringing through the workflow and the AI optimization that's going to give speed, productivity, reducing costs, and be much smarter in the long run. So lots of enablement. We're focusing on lots of enablement. We're focusing on partner to partner, where we'll bring some deeper technology partners in that might have some build capabilities with some of these deep domain expertise and bridging that up together. Think of the ISV ecosystem surrounding some of my best advisors to come in as a single solution ultimately to solve that business problem. But there's just a lot to help go from, this is what I've always been doing with my customer, they're very happy, to now my customer is expecting something different. How do I meet them where they are? And what is the technology that's going to help them do that? So that is becoming a builder that's becoming like deeply enabled technologically. So from a technical enablement perspective. And then one more thing, if we focus only on the technical enablement, and I always hear in the market, skills, we need our partners to have more skills. And I'm not disagreeing with that. Technical skills, absolutely technical skills. But there is a fundamental shift in the business practice as well. So when you think of enablement for your partners, we have to think beyond just technical enablement and just selling enablement. We actually have to think of practice building in a totally different way, which is again, how you're going to solve these things with 100% accuracy in the way that you expect it in a time frame now that a customer is expecting to interact with that. And that's a practice and a business value proposition that we have to do as well. So we do all three. We have a practice building essentially for the new AI forward. We have technical enablement that will help understand not only just how to implement, but more importantly, how to integrate and build AI into those workflows. And then your sales proposition becomes obviously very different as well. You're no longer selling product, you're no longer selling bundles, you're selling solutions, as you had said. And those solutions become a little different with the enablement of AI.
Yeah. Something I want to touch on the skills issue, um, because I'm of two minds. So I'm not going to say I disagree with you, but I will say that I will put an asterisk next to it,
Yeah.
because I absolutely agree that one of your jobs and the people within your organization is to provide the resources and the training so that the partners can develop the skills that will make them valuable in the market. And I think sometimes, though, is that the vendors, and I won't say this about Sage, but you and I both know some that do act like this. They treat the training not as an enabler, but as a discriminator, meaning that, oh, they took this training, so therefore we're going to pay more attention to them. It doesn't matter whether they're good at it or not, right? But the thing that I'm finding interesting in listening to you describe this is that you have an umbrella program that
Yeah.
that creates a framework for your partners, but you do not have uniform partners. You've
No.
referenced this a few times. You have resellers, you have consultants, you have agents and advisors, you have ISVs. I mean, these are all very different type of companies. How do you marshal them all in one program and still come to a result that people say, yes, I feel good about this. This is where I need to be.
Yeah. We have to go on a transformation. I love the challenge on this. I agree with you, by the way. I think that when you hear vendors go skills, 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 and I've skilled 1,000 and thus everyone will be ready to go. I actually I am very much aligned in your thought on that. It's not
Mm,
just a number of skills or just even a number of certifications, right? So I think that becomes important. Sage has to go through an evolution as well. And we're doing channel transformation as we speak because this started with cloud. And you and I've seen this. It started with cloud with sort of parts of, types of different partners were starting to blend. AI is smashing this all together, right? My system integrators, my SIs are all builders. They are building time to value AI, repeatable IP that they can actually bring in to reduce their own costs on implementation, as an example. I have ISVs that are connecting up and building out the ability to, connect cross border and do, selling in addition to sort of just building into uh, our reseller channel. So the point being is, I don't think there is an Uber program that's fit for purpose, that one size fits all is going to work for any company any longer. I think
mm,
that a lot of vendors that think everything's going to fit in like one big umbrella and one program with a standard set of give gets, you're going to miss the mark on how partners are evolving by motion. So what you're going to start to look at is, who are your builders? Who are your advisors? Who are ultimately continue to be, their core motion is like, I'm going to sell as an advisor, but selling is like ultimately what I'm going to do. And I think you're going to have to build those give gets, and what makes that special, that type of partner special, dependent on their business model. So
mhm,
Sage has to evolve as well. And that's the work that we're doing over channel transformation, is why we'll have an umbrella program where, of course, it provides a good net of helping sort of operate an ecosystem. The reality is that those partners will fit into motions that then give them the best benefits, and we can actually recognize where they have the most value based on what they ultimately do. Whether that's, you're going to build something, you could have an incredible ISV, but it may not be taking off in the market. And if we think just as an ISV, there might be a what traditionally was a VAR, and this is very in the construction space, let's just take this example. In the construction space, VARs are building their own unique IP to bring that last mile capability into the hands of the construction industry. And then they find that first customer, and that becomes that secret sauce and a repeatable set of IP that they then repeat on. If
Mhm.
we continue to handle them as a VAR and think of them as, oh, this is what you only do, we miss out on the opportunity to think of them as a builder and an opportunity to add construction value in an AI agent that maybe we would have totally missed, thinking that we should be go working with an ISV that's a traditional ISV on the other side. So Larry, I agree with you. I think that most programs are going to evolve over time. How big your program is and how many partners you have. Sage has a massive ecosystem. Some of that will take some time as you do it, but I think you will start to see just the industry in general start to recognize that there is no standard, like what I call the capital P, the big program. You're going to have sort of these micro programs that really help focus on what the motion and the business model is ultimately for the partner, so that you can provide the right skills, you do provide the right incentives, and you can bubble up and understand who's the best performing for what they do, for what the customer needs. I'll make one last point on this that I think that I see, and I'd be curious, Larry, if you're seeing this as well. The other thing that's happening is no more do you have a single vendor solution that's going to happen. You're not going to have a VAR that's going to go in and basically that's the only partner a customer is going to be working with. They're going to have their own mini ecosystem of partners depending on what they need to have done, back again to the customer wanting to have the best outcome against what they're trying to solve for their business. So you're going to start to see the ISV with the VAR, with a system integrator. Maybe there might be some particular embedded capabilities within there as well. You're going to start to see this ecosystem play together. And our job at Sage is to help facilitate and make sure that everyone can play together, and that they're not actually creating friction where we're not actually helping the customer go faster. So you're going to see that multi-ecosystem play, and they're going to come together. And our job now as leaders in the channel is, how do we facilitate that to make that as friction free as possible and actually unlock an ecosystem that will work together in the future at a
Mm.
speed that I have not seen in my lifetime, to be quite honest. It is
Yeah.
moving so fast.
Yeah. I may or may not have 1 or 100 slides on what you're just describing. I mean, it's, um, you're right. The customer, the customer has some pretty high expectations. We just released some research we've done. 73% of customers expect that white glove treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That they know, that they expect that whether it's a vendor coming in direct or whether it's a partner, that they're going to be able to marshal the resources to bring everything together seamlessly.
Yeah.
And here's the one that I impress upon the partners that are always, saying that, in sales reps nowadays too, that I get to interact with, because the sales reps are really concerned about pricing themselves out of a deal,
Yes.
right? So they leave a partner out of it because we'll save that cost for another time. But I have to tell them is that somewhere between, depending on the category, 64 and 84% of customers will pay more to get the experience that they want, not less. They're not going to go bargain shopping. They will pay more to get what they need.
But that's exactly right, because at the end of the day, for they're solving something that's going to hold ultimately at the customer, make them more of a
Hmm.
competitive, have them more of a competitive advantage. That will be their claim to fame, to be able to help them modernize and ultimately compete in this new economy. And so I agree with you, and I think your 1 to 75 pages is going to be an interesting read from your take on it, because I think you're exactly right. I think gone are the days of this. I'm going to sell a thing, and I'll maybe heavily discount that thing to get you started, when that will only get me 25% of the way.
Yep.
Now, in the past, Larry, what's interesting is, and Sage, just for your audience, Sage in small and mid-sized business, and medium is basically could be an enterprise. It just happens to be relatively a little bit smaller, but still has that same expectation, still has some of that very same complexity. And what AI is doing is informing those customers what they should expect even more. And I think maybe 7, 8 years ago, okay, we could probably start with that and add, and then add on and add on to your point on your sales reps. But customers are smarter now. They're being informed. They're having informed decisions just at their fingertips that maybe they may not have had before, or had to go so much and do a lot of research, or have a consultant leading essentially the RFP, whatever that sort of scenario looks like. It's definitely changing. The other thing I'd say on the sales rep side, and I don't know if you see this, because I think your point is spot on. I think sellers sometimes are very worried, and I'll say whether that's sellers at the vendor company, or sellers that sit within your channel organization. Nobody owns the customer. And there's this sort of thought of like, well, I own the customer and I own the sales cycle, and I don't want to do anything that could disrupt the sales cycle of which I own. And I try and shift that thinking for my channel partners and my sellers here as well, which is, okay, remember, for every time you think you own that customer, there's 7 others in there around the solution set that say they own that too.
Yeah.
So you have to think about, how do you bring this together to ultimately bring that value to the customer? And I think those days of product selling, I own the customer, let's keep this someone out for now, for account control purposes, it's just not gonna survive in this sort of future state. And trying to reframe that, I think, is one I spend a lot of time on as well. And I think it'll be interesting, Larry, to see if you start to see the data on, the more you have around an ecosystem sell, the faster, the larger, and the more qualified that opportunity ultimately gets to the deal close. And then again, in a cloud world, you're never closing, you're growing, you're driving adoption, you're
Yeah. Right.
consuming. So you
Yeah.
can't have a seller who can dip in and dip out. You need that ecosystem around them to keep that sort of flywheel going. And that serves everybody's purpose so much better. So yeah, I agree with you on all those points. And I think there'll be
Yeah.
some time that we're going to have to do to make that shift. I don't think everyone is there yet, but it's certainly the direction that I see that customers are heading to. And when you have a multi-ecosystem sale, you have a customer that is ultimately sticky and will stay with you for a very, very long time.
Yeah, no. So the actual experience on this is, we have this, um, the ecosystem sale, those multi-party sales, they are larger. They tend to be more profitable. The customers tend to be happier of the outcomes. Downside, sales cycles take a bit longer. But there's nothing is perfect. So I'll take that part. Gretchen, I do want to go out on let's call it an educational note.
Yeah.
It's that you have a channel that's already built around this outcome-based philosophy. You have partners that are already there. And this is where we said earlier, this is where the rest of the channel at least is saying they're going to. I have
Yeah.
questions. I have questions myself on this, but let's not get into that right now. What do you think? What can other vendors, what can your peers learn from you and Sage as they're trying to move or evolve up to where you already are, as you're already looking forward to evolving again to stay ahead of the curve? What's the transferable lesson here?
Yeah. Again, I think you always have to disrupt yourself. Like I said, you might say we're here because we have partners that deeply understand that customer, but we have to disrupt that channel again because of where things are moving. Where I would say other peers are looking to ultimately get there, the thing that I find that we fall into this trap is we keep putting value on the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to move away from the transaction that's going to show value, and it's going to move to being that strategic advisor. Where and how that transaction ultimately occurs, more and more of that, even in the SMB space, is going to go through marketplace, The procurement part of that transaction is going to be the least strategic part of what that engagement's going to look like. And I think the mistake sometimes that we make is we still put the most value on who the partner that leads the transaction. And I think that over time is what we just talked about. When you're talking about outcomes and outcome-based selling, okay, maybe it's the person that has the most expertise in procurement that will drive the transaction, but they're not actually being the advisor into what ultimately that customer needs over the next 5 to 7 years. So I would say advice, and including, I would say, Sage as well, we're working on, which is transaction selling is going to move to advisory. That is going to get consolidated into who does sort of that procurement work the best. So now, how do you motivate those advisors? How do you motivate advisory based selling, outcome based selling, and make sure that you have the optics on the partners that are actually bringing that best value to your customer over time? And be okay that that transaction may ultimately go and consolidate through a marketplace of some sort. And that's okay, because a customer gets value on consolidated procurement. They get some discounts and other things that are going to help solve for that. But you never want to lose sight, Larry, to your point of what problem are you trying to solve ultimately for the customer? And that's the value that the partner is going to ultimately bring. Same
Yeah.
thing. And then disrupt. Bring in profitability, as you just mentioned, and make sure that you are continuing to create real value exchange for your partner channel as well, so that they can see a profitable path forward beyond the margin in the business that you're going to ultimately have them focus on. Last point I'll say on this one, at least my partners will talk about this quite a bit. We talk a lot about profitability. I think most of us do. This is something we've talked about for quite a long time. Profitability doesn't always have to be in margin. I think we understand that now. But now that's shifting to durable growth. So, yes, you want to be profitable and we will make you profitable. But the thing now I'm focusing on is, how do we not only are you profitable, but that you're driving durable, predictable growth, and that you have that ability through Sage. And you know that when you get a Sage customer and you're engaged with us from the Sage Partner Network, that you are now building out durable growth for the foreseeable future. And I think that's now where you continue will see the shift. And that's certainly where we're focusing on.
That is a fantastic place for us to end this conversation, although I could go on talking with you for hours. Gretchen,
We'll have to
great
do it again.
advice. Absolutely. Absolutely. Gretchen, really great having you here. Gretchen O'Hara, the channel chief at Sage. It's wonderful talking with you.
Great to see you. And thank you so much. And thank you to giving the opportunity to talk with your audience. Appreciate it.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this edition of Changing Channels. Again, I want to thank our guest, Gretchen O'Hara, the channel chief at Sage Software, for joining us. And again, as always, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. This podcast is for you, about helping to make the channel better for everyone. If you like what we're doing here, please hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends, and also check out our other podcasts, In the Margins and the Network Effect, as well as all the research, best practices, and services we offer Channelnomics to help your businesses. Until next time, I'm Larry Walsh.